It was one of those rare, carefree evenings. Dinner at a nice spot, followed by a visit to a bar we'd heard about but never actually checked out before. The place was called the Misty Shore. Both of us worked at a popular restaurant on the edge of town, and we'd heard good things. Decent cocktails, solid music, and a big dance floor. Being with her always made my nights better, and this one was especially fun because she'd decided to let loose with a few drinks. She usually limited herself to one or two, but that night she had four, and I, for some reason, also drank more than usual. It felt good, though. We were relaxed, laughing, having fun. She was one of those people who got even more playful and affectionate after a few drinks, and I was curious to see where that might lead once we were back home. We both loved dancing, and just like always, guys kept trying to cut in and dance with her. And just like always, she politely turned them down every time. As we left, she was fumbling with her jacket, managed to smack herself in the face with her purse, and somehow tried to shove the wrong hand into her sleeve. She tripped and practically collapsed into my arms, giggling up at me with glassy, unfocused eyes. She staggered a few more times before I finally got her to the car. "You're my husband, right?" she slurred as I helped her into the passenger seat. "Pretty sure, yeah," I chuckled, already wondering if tonight's plans were going to shift from romance to making sure she didn't throw up in bed. Then, out of nowhere, she giggled again and blurted, "I slept with Tyler Jones." "What?" I turned toward her, but her head lolled to the side, already fast asleep. Once we got home, I got her undressed and into bed. Even after 3 years of marriage, her body still left me breathless. But instead of enjoying the view, my mind kept circling one question. Who the hell was Tyler Jones? And had he touched her the way I had? Had she enjoyed it? I barely got any sleep. Meanwhile, she was out cold, blissfully unaware of the storm she'd just triggered. She finally surfaced close to noon. By then, I was on my 4th cup of coffee. This one laced with a generous splash of Bailey's because, honestly, why not? Lenny, short for Lenore, stumbled into the kitchen, still undressed, her hair a wild mess. She made herself some coffee before dropping into the chair beside me. We sat in silence until I couldn't hold back any longer. I turned to her. "Who's Tyler Jones?" Her brow creased in confusion. "Huh? Last night," I said. "You told me you slept with him." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "I said what?" "That's exactly what you said," I replied. "I was drunk," she said with a dismissive wave. "You know drunk people say all kinds of crazy stuff." "Yeah," I thought bitterly. Sometimes drunk words are the ones closest to the truth. We sat quietly after that, drinking coffee like nothing had happened. She washed our mugs like she always did, something I used to find sweet. But all I could picture was someone else's hands sliding over her skin. The next few days were thick with silence. At work, we barely acknowledged each other. At home, we moved like strangers sharing the same space. And for the first time since we'd started sleeping together, there was no Zex. At work, my mind kept spinning. I started noticing little things. How she lingered too long at certain tables, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, flashing smiles that felt too wide. Maybe I was reading too much into it, or maybe I wasn't. Finally, I hit my limit. "I need to know where we stand," I said to her. "Either we figure this out, or I'm done." "Same," she shot back, frustration sharp in her voice. "I'm sick of you watching me like I'm guilty of something." "Then just tell me the truth," I said. She rolled her eyes. "I don't remember saying it." "But you did say it," I pressed. "And sometimes drunk people say what they're too scared to admit sober." "If it happened before we got married, fine," I said. "But if it was after, we've got a problem." "Then I guess we've got a problem," she said. "Because I have no clue why I said it." We hit a wall. For a solid week, we barely spoke. We slept in the same bed, but as far apart as possible. No words, no touch, no anything. We even started driving to work separately, something we'd never done before. I'd actually been planning to surprise her with a car for Christmas, but now it all seemed pointless. One morning at work, I noticed someone else handling her usual section. Confused, I went to find the manager. "Why's Katie covering Lenny's tables?" I asked. The manager glanced up. "She called in sick this morning. She never mentioned anything to me," I said. He gave me a pointed look. "Maybe you two need to talk?" I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. By 9:30 that night, I still hadn't heard from her. That's when the manager approached me again. "Just so you know," he said, Lenny called to quit, said she's not coming back. I grabbed my coat and drove straight home. The apartment felt hollow. Some of her clothes were gone, her toiletries missing from the bathroom counter. Close to midnight, I called her parents. Her dad answered. "Have you heard from Lenny?" I asked. "We have," he said. "Do you know where she is?" "Probably staying with Charlotte," he replied. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice edged with concern. I gave him the short version. "Fix it," he said flatly, "before it's too late." Then he hung up. I called Charlotte next. No answer. I left a voicemail asking her to have Lenny call me. It felt like she'd made her move, leaving me stuck retracing every moment, trying to figure out if I'd handled it wrong, or if there was anything I could have done differently. But every time I ended up back at the same place. She got drunk and said it, and I reacted exactly the way any husband would. I lay in bed that night, wide awake, replaying every word. The next day, I tried calling her brother. "Sorry, Andy," he said bluntly. "All I'll say is, you really screwed this up." Finally, I managed to get Charlotte on the phone. "Hey, Andy," she answered, her tone guarded. "Do you know where Lenny is?" I asked. "I do." "Is she with you?" "She's here." "Can I talk to her?" "Not right now." "Why not?" "She's upset," Charlotte said. "She's hurt, and she's pissed off that you don't trust her." "When am I supposed to believe her?" I demanded. "When she admits she slept with someone else, or when she swears she didn't?" "Don't be such an idiot," Charlotte snapped. "I'm serious," I pressed. "What am I supposed to believe? Which version is the truth?" "You'd better figure that out, Andy," she warned, "or you're going to lose her." "She's the one who started this," I argued. "If she's innocent, she should prove it." "And how exactly is she supposed to do that?" Charlotte asked. "I don't know. Lie detector, swear on a Bible, whatever." "That's ridiculous," she said. "If anyone needs to prove something, it's you. You're the one accusing her, so show some proof." "But she confessed, Charlotte," I said. "You're going to lose her," she said, "and it's going to be your own damn fault." Then she hung up, but her words stuck. "Maybe you should prove she did it," and they kept echoing in my head. At 11, I called work to ask for some time off. The day manager already seemed to know a bit about what was going on. "How much time do you need?" he asked. "At least a week," I said. "Maybe more. You and Lenny were supposed to move back to day shifts next week, but we'll manage," he said. "Take 2 weeks. We'll call it vacation. If you need more, we'll figure it out." "Thanks," I said. I spent the first 2 days trying to process everything, calling Lenny repeatedly, but she never picked up. That one line, "prove she did it," kept looping in my mind. So, I made a desperate plan. At the library, I dug through yearbooks from our graduating year, plus a couple before and after, looking for anyone named Tyler Jones. It took 3 days, but I found 3. I searched online and found reunion pages with updates and even job info for some alumni. The first Tyler worked in DC, making it hard to contact him directly. The second, a car salesman, worked nearby. I called the dealership. At the lot, I asked a mechanic if Tyler was still around. "Yeah, he's out with a customer," the guy said. I left without introducing myself. I didn't want to seem suspicious. Instead, I came back near closing time. Tyler was still there. When his shift ended, I followed him to a nearby bar. After a few minutes, I slid onto the stool next to him. "Andy Buckles," I said, offering my hand. "Tyler Jones," he said, shaking it, no sign of recognition. We ended up chatting for a couple of hours, buying rounds like 2 guys killing time. It was easy. Too easy. I repeated the routine for the next 2 nights. Tyler was funny, charming, the kind of guy who could talk anyone into anything. No wonder he sold cars. If I wasn't looking for a reason to hate him, I might have liked him. To avoid suspicion, I eased off and turned my focus to the third Tyler, a TV news producer. Getting into his office was impossible, so I staked out the building with a copy of his prom photo, hoping to spot him. On my second night waiting, I saw him leave just after 9. He'd put on about 100 pounds, but it was him. A car picked him up, and I watched as he leaned over and kissed the driver. A long, slow kiss. Definitely not him. That left me back at the bar with car salesman Tyler. Over a few nights, I learned a lot. Divorced almost 3 years, barely saw his kids, said his drinking ruined his marriage, but blamed his ex for driving him to it. He still drank, but claimed he hadn't been drunk since the divorce. "She was hot and the Zex was great," he said, "but she drove me nuts, so I drank." He joked about marriage being a trap, using the Andy Griffith Show as proof. The only miserable guy on that show? Otis. And you know why Otis drinks? His wife. I almost forgot why I was there. Tyler was funny, smooth, a natural salesman. He claimed he'd been with more women than I could count, but I needed to know if one of them was my wife. And if so, why? Why him? Why anyone? Lenny never gave me a reason to doubt her. She seemed happy, with me, with our life, with our Zex. Sure, she got hit on at work all the time, but I never thought she'd act on it. When my time off was up, I went back to work. They put me on day shifts, and I spent the day half watching the dining room, hoping to see Lenny walk in. She didn't. I kept calling her, still nothing. I started to wonder if she was even trying to save our marriage, or if someone else had already replaced me. One night, with nothing better to do, I drove to Charlotte's house. Eventually, Lenny and Charlotte came out, got in Lenny's car, and drove off. I followed, but traffic slowed me down, and I lost them. Frustrated, I went back and waited. A few hours later, they returned, arms full of shopping bags. I got out of my car and walked over to them. "Lenny, we need to talk," I said. She barely glanced at me. "Unless you're here to apologize, stay away. If you keep following me, I'll get a restraining order." "Lenny, please," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "Just hear me out. I've got ideas." "No," she cut me off. "Either apologize or leave me alone." They went inside without another word. I stood there for a minute, then got back in my car and drove away. I was back on days, but after work, I went to the bar more often. Tyler was there most nights, probably whenever he didn't have someone else to go home with. After a few days apart, we saw each other again, greeting each other like old friends. That night, a couple walked in, and neither of us could ignore the woman. She was stunning, the kind of beauty that makes people stop and stare. Every inch of her was flawless, from her hair to her body to the barely there dress that revealed more than it covered. When she sat down and crossed her legs, the slit slid open, exposing nearly her entire thigh. It had been way too long since I'd seen bare skin like that. I felt a jolt of desire I hadn't felt in weeks. "Holy hell," Jones muttered. "Amen," I said. "I've been with a lot of women," he added, eyes still glued to her. "But damn, she might be the finest." He waved the bartender over. "Who's she?" "Vicky Hairston," the bartender said. "Her husband's one of those TV lawyers. They come in now and then. I think he enjoys showing her off." I glanced at the guy and recognized him from his commercials. Meanwhile, Jones kept staring. "My ex looked good," he said, "but I've never been this close to anything like that." Then out of nowhere, he switched gears. "This whole thing started a few months back," he said. "What thing?" I asked. "This habit." He sipped his drink and smiled. "I walked into a new bar one night and saw this waitress. Not quite Vicky level, but close." My stomach clenched, but I stayed quiet. "Nothing happened that first night," he said casually. "We talked a little, that's all. She was married, but a ring never stopped me. Most married women are just waiting for a reason, even if they don't know it yet. I'm happy to provide one." I gripped my glass tighter, but he kept going. I asked if she was happily married. They always say yes at first, but then she admitted they didn't do much anymore. Work, home, repeat. Sometimes dinner or dancing, but a lot of nights he worked late, and she went out alone. I couldn't breathe. "The second she said that, I knew I'd sleep with her," he continued. "Women out alone while their husbands work, they're my specialty. All they need is a little nudge." He smiled into his drink, completely unaware of my clenched fists. By my fourth visit, she agreed to meet me for a drink. That turned into a few casual dates. Dinner, dancing. She loved dancing, maybe even more than Zex. But when we danced, she pressed her whole body against me. When she felt me get hard, she just pushed closer. My chest tightened. Lenny loved to dance. We danced every chance we got, even at work when the place was quiet. "What happened next?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. People at the bar were starting to tune in, their attention shifting toward us. He grinned. "One night, she was extra friendly, grinding all over me. I figured, why not go for it?" "Go for what?" I asked. "Ask if she wanted to screw." "What did she say?" He gave a smug shrug. She hesitated for a second, then smiled and said, "I thought you'd never ask. But we've only got about 3 hours before my hubby gets home." My stomach dropped. Hubby. That's what Lenny always called me. "We practically ran to my place," he said. "She tripped on the stairs, gave me a flash of her underwear, soaked, by the way. I reached for her, she giggled and ran up the steps. The small crowd around us was fully tuned in now, laughing wide-eyed. Even the women didn't look offended, just curious. Once we were inside, he said, clothes came off fast, and when I saw her undressed, perfect body, perfect everything, I just stood there, taking it all in. He paused, reliving the memory, then chuckled. She walked over, shaking her hips, grabbed my waist, and got down on her knees. My hands shook around my glass. When I was done, she said it was my turn. She ran to the bed, flopped down up, ready for me. A woman in the crowd laughed. Jesus, I'm getting turned on just listening. The men laughed, and a few glanced her way. She blushed. What? It's hot. Was he describing Lenny? Some of it felt familiar, the way she loved giving and receiving, but other parts didn't fit. Maybe he had some move I didn't, or maybe I was losing my mind. I drained my drink and ordered another, unsure if I wanted him to keep talking or finally shut up. After a while, she needed a break. Thank God, because my back and tongue were killing me. I grabbed us drinks and we lay there talking. Didn't take long before she started playing with herself and asked me to go again. He grinned. Damn, I'm sweating just thinking about it. So was I. Not from excitement, but from rage and fear. Around us, people were reacting, laughing, whispering, even arguing. One woman muttered, I could do all that if you gave me the chance, then dragged her boyfriend outside. Another guy clapped Jones on the back. If you're not still seeing her, tell me her name. Jones smirked. Still seeing her? Hell yeah. A woman like that, you don't let her go. More laughter. One guy shouted, no woman's too good to pass up. The woman next to him slapped his arm. Seriously? You passed me up for her? Without waiting for a response, she stormed out and he hurried after her. Where does she work? Someone at the bar asked. Nowhere right now, Jones said with a shrug. She's taking a break. Taking a break. Just like Lenny, my stomach nodded. Where is she now? Someone else asked. Jones glanced at his watch. With her best friend, but later, she's with me. Bile burned the back of my throat. She's married, I said, forcing the words out. Where's her husband? Jones laughed. Probably at home. The whole bar erupted in laughter. I pulled out my phone and dialed Charlotte. Loud music blared on her end as she answered. Andy, I can't talk right now, she shouted over the noise. Is Lenny with you? I asked. I heard Lenny yell in the background. Tell him I'm still waiting for that apology. Then Charlotte hung up. At the bar, Jones soaked up the attention, entertaining the crowd with more stories of his conquests. The guys cheered him on, and even the women who called him out couldn't help listening. They nicknamed him Super Stud. The men wanted to believe him. The women mostly laughed. Jones claimed that after his divorce, he gave up heavy drinking, but made up for it with plenty of Zex. He even bragged that his buddy made I Had Zex with Tyler Jones stickers, which showed up in some dive bar bathrooms near the lake. That caught my attention. I left and drove straight to Foggy Shore, the bar where Lenny had drunkenly blurted out, I had Zex with Tyler Jones. I wasn't there for a drink, but I ordered one anyway, nursing it while I kept an eye on the women's restroom. When closing time came, the bartender gave the familiar nudge. Drink up, buddy. Time to head out. Hey, I said, hesitating. Weird question. You ever hear about those I Had Zex with Tyler Jones stickers? The bartender laughed. Yeah, his buddies slapped those all over the place. Bachelorette parties used to come here just to steal them. There are still a few stuck to the bathroom stalls. He knocked on the women's room door to make sure it was empty, then let me in. Sure enough, every stall door had one inside and out. I exhaled. If Lenny saw those drunk, maybe all she did was repeat what she read. Maybe it was never a confession, just something stupid she blurted out. It was the first hopeful thought I'd had in weeks, but it didn't explain everything. Lenny had been gone for over a month, and Jones claimed he'd been with his mystery woman for months. It didn't add up. Could he really charm a married woman into throwing away her life for some cheap fling? Could Lenny? No. It had to be the stickers. That was the only thing that made sense. I called Lenny again. No answer. When I tried Charlotte, pounding music filled the background, nearly drowning her out. What do you want, Andy? She slurred, her words thick with booze. I need to talk to Lenny, I said. She's not here. Where is she? Is she with someone? That's none of your business, Charlotte snapped. Please, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Just ask her to call me. Fine, if I see her. When will you see her? Maybe tomorrow, she said, sounding indifferent. The next day, just before noon, my phone rang. It was Lenny. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was simple. I saw the stickers. I understand now. Please call me. I shut off my phone. After weeks of silence, now she wanted to talk? Let her wait. I spent the night in the bar's back room ignoring every call, the same way she'd ignored mine. It hurt. I missed her. I wanted to hold her, tell her I loved her. But I also wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I'd felt. The next day, I was behind the bar when I heard her voice ordering drinks. I turned. There she was in her work uniform, looking right at me. She reached into her apron, pulled something out, and pinned it to her shirt. I want to have Zex with Andy Buckles. I couldn't help but smile. It was silly, rushed. But there it was, loud and clear. She wore it all night, brushing off teasing from customers and staff, never taking her eyes off me. Guys raised their drinks, cheering me on. A few walked up, claiming to be Andy Buckles themselves, but she just laughed and kept her focus on me. As the night wound down and the cleaning crew took over, she and I met on the empty dance floor. One couple was still there, more grinding than dancing. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. I peeled the sticker off her shirt, looked at it, then slid it into my pocket. "Me too," she whispered. "Dance with me?" "With pleasure." We moved slowly, her body molding perfectly to mine, the same way it always had. It felt like forever since we'd been this close, and just the feel of her against me had me hard within minutes. I hadn't felt like that since seeing Vicky Hairston, and I'd felt guilty about that too. "When are you going to make good on this sticker?" I whispered. She cupped my face, kissed me softly, and rocked her hips against me, making sure I felt every curve. "As soon as you take me home," she whispered. Before I could respond, a voice cut through the moment. "There she is, my girl." We froze. Joan stood just a few feet away, grinning. "You trying to steal my girl, Andy?" Lenny's eyes filled with panic. "You know him?" I asked, my voice cold. She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. Jones grabbed her arm, pulled her close, and kissed her. Right there, in front of me. When he let go, she turned to me, eyes full of guilt. "How soon can you leave, baby?" Jones asked, just loud enough for me and everyone nearby to hear. "I need you." Lenny took a shaky step toward me. "Andy, I held up my hand, stopping her. "Please." Jones smirked. "What's going on, baby?" "Get away from me," she said, voice trembling. She pushed him back and turned to me. "Andy, it only happened once. Please, talk to me." Jones snorted. "Once? Try at least 6. "Why the hell would you tell him that?" she snapped. "Relax, baby, let's go." "Leave me alone," she said, voice cracking. I finally spoke, cold and steady. "This the waitress you bragged about, the best lover you ever had?" "That's her," Jones grinned. Acting innocent now, but she wasn't shy when she was riding me. Lenny collapsed to the floor, right there in front of our coworkers and customers. Jones had just outed their affair to the whole bar. The silence was suffocating. Everyone felt it, except Jones. "Well, you coming or not?" he asked. Lenny shook her head. "Suit yourself," he said. "She's good, but not that good." "No," I said quietly. "Take her. I'm done." Jones paused, confused. "Wait, you slept with her too?" "For more than 3 years. She's my wife. At least for now." His face went pale. "Your wife?" He couldn't backpedal fast enough. "Hey!" I called after him. "Come get her. She's yours." "Hell no," Jones said. "I don't want her." Jill, the night manager, stepped forward. "Lenny, you should go," she said, signaling 2 other staff members to escort her out. I stood there, brain numb, mind filled with images I didn't want but couldn't stop. I cleaned the bar like a machine, just going through the motions. Gil came over quietly. "Go home," he said. "Get some rest. Call when you're ready." I left work, went home, locked the door, and bolted it. Lenny wasn't getting her stuff until I was good and ready, if ever. Less than an hour later, I heard her key in the lock, followed by a knock. "Andy, please let me in," Lenny's voice called softly through the door. "Go away," I said. "Just let me grab a few things," she pleaded. "For what?" I shot back. "You already took your makeup. You don't need clothes for the kind of work you do now." "I'm not a hooker," she cried. "No," I said coldly. "Hookers get paid. You gave it away for free. That's worse." Her voice cracked. "That's not who I am." "Be here at 9 tomorrow," I told her. "Whatever's left will be in the dumpster by 10. "Please, Andy," she whispered. "Get lost, cheater." The next morning, right at 9, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, it wasn't Lenny. It was Charlotte. "What do you want?" I asked. "I'm here for Lenny's stuff," she said. I pointed to the garbage bags piled by the door. It's all there. Anything else will be on the curb in an hour. She's not up for this right now, Charlotte said. Why? She drank a whole bottle of vodka last night. Oh, she's suffering, I snapped. How do you think I feel? And you, her best friend, you encouraged all of this. For what? So she could screw some smooth-talking dirtbag who bragged about it to the whole bar? Yeah, you're both sick. Charlotte said nothing and started dragging bags out. Tell her I want my grandmother's ring back, I added. 3 days later, half the furniture was gone. All the things she loved. I didn't know if she'd screwed Jones on our bed, but either way, I wasn't keeping it. Then she showed up. What's wrong with you? Lenny demanded, her voice sharp. People are taking my furniture. It's not yours, I said. You left it. And me. You don't get to claim it now. Her eyes narrowed. Give me my grandmother's ring. It's mine now, I said. Give it back. Or what? I stepped closer. That ring belongs to my wife, not a cheating liar who jumped into bed with the first guy who sweet-talked her. She took a step back, ripped the ring off her finger, and threw it at me. I caught it easily and slipped it into my pocket. I thought we could talk, she said, her voice trembling. Talk to Tyler Jones, I said coldly. You had plenty to say to him. Was he the only one, or were there others? She slid down the wall, her back against it as tears welled in her eyes. I just wanted some fun, Andy. Fun? My voice was pure ice. He came into the bar and started talking to me, she said, her voice breaking. You were busy, so you didn't notice. One night he asked me for a drink after my shift. You were working late, so I went. He was funny, charming, and then what? I demanded. He touched me, my hand, then my chests, she whispered. He pinched my mammals the way you do, and I lost control. So anyone who knows how to touch you like that gets to screw you? No, she sobbed. Then what happened to the woman I married? She hesitated. Charlotte said... She cut herself off, her face flushing. What did Charlotte say? I pressed. She said you were boring, that you never let me have fun. Every time we hung out, she pushed me to cut loose. She's been trying to set me up for years. I told you to stay away from her, I said. She's my best friend. No. Taking care of you was my job. How many guys did she set you up with? None. It was just Tyler. How many, Lenny? I demanded. 2? 5? More? Forget it. I cut her off. I don't even want to know. Get out. She stood slowly, wiping at her face. Can I at least check if I left anything? There's nothing here for you, I said. What about the car title? It's in the bags Charlotte took, I told her, along with all the photos, except the wedding album. That went in the trash. She stood there silently, back to the door. I opened it. Go. Andy, please. Leave. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped into the hallway. I shut the door. On her, on us, on everything. At work, it was hard to look at the dance floor where it all fell apart. Every time I saw it, the memory hit me like a punch. That night, Gil sat at the bar, sipping water. We've got an opening at the Capitol International Hotel downtown. Oriskani, piano bar, upscale crowd, better pay. Want me to put in a word? 3 days later, I was there. The manager introduced me, gave me a quick tour, and I started on day shifts, 10 to 7, with a classy crowd and no reminders of my old life. The day before my first shift, I filed for divorce and stopped shaving. A fresh start. Lenny had already drained half our bank account. No surprise. Charlotte probably coached her. I canceled our credit card and opened a new account in my name. The phones were in her name, so I got a new number too. She was served at Charlotte's. I never asked how she reacted. I didn't care. One day it hit me. Jones claimed they'd been together at least 6 times. That meant I'd been with her after him. And who knew if there were others? I saw my doctor. No symptoms, but I needed to know. The results, gonorrhea and syphilis. I wanted to eliminate her. I'd never even thought about hurting her before, but when the doctor said syphilis, all bets were off. I could have strangled her. And Jones. I almost called to scream at her, but why bother? A few days later, there was a knock at my door. I'd just gotten back from another round of antibiotic shots. It was her brother, Jimmy. You son of a witch, he roared. You cheated on my sister and gave her some disease. I ought to eliminate you. There was real homicide in his eyes. And I knew Jimmy. He'd done time for attack. He wasn't bluffing. Hold on, I said, stepping back. You've got it backward. Your sister cheated on me. She's the one who gave it to me. Liar! She said, of course she did. I'm going to kick your A. He took a step toward me and I backed up, but there wasn't much space. Before you do anything, I said, keeping my voice even. There were at least a dozen people who heard Jones brag about sleeping with her 6 times. She didn't deny it. Later, she told me it was all just for fun. That's what your sister called it. Fun. And Charlotte, she helped. I saw the confusion break through his anger, gears turning as he tried to process. You don't have to take my word for it, I said. But you know me. I'm not a liar, and I sure as hell wasn't the cheater. He hesitated, torn between belief and denial. If you really want the truth, talk to Tyler Jones. I gave him the dealership's name. And if you can get through to Lenny, do her a favor. Get her away from Charlotte. Jimmy stared at me a moment longer, then walked out without another word. 4 days later, I was cleaning the bar when I noticed a newspaper someone left behind. Buried in the local section was a short article. A man test driving a car had pulled over, claiming he heard a noise. When the salesman got out to check, the customer knocked him nearly to pass away, then calmly drove the car back to the lot. The salesman? Tyler Jones. The article described Jones as a known Casanova who'd been tied to multiple broken marriages. Blood tests showed he had gonorrhea and syphilis. I couldn't help but laugh. Keep it up, Jimmy. A few pages later, another story caught my eye. A trailer belonging to Charlotte Williams had burned down. Total loss. No insurance. One of these days, I figured I'd have to sit Jimmy down and talk about his anger issues. After I bought him a drink, I briefly wondered where Charlotte would live now. Maybe with Lenny, then realized I didn't care. Despite it all, the police never came knocking. Seemed no one was in a hurry to solve either case. Meanwhile, I was getting used to my new beard. I screwed up trimming it at first, but I got the hang of it. Customers even started complimenting me on it. The divorce went through easily. Lenny signed the papers without a fight and didn't even show up in court. The antibiotics did their job, and soon enough, I got a clean bill of health. Right around then, my lease ended, so I found a smaller place closer to work. I didn't replace much of the furniture, just got a new bed. The thing barely fit in my tiny bedroom, and getting it up 3 flights was a nightmare, but a few friends helped. One of them was Georgie Patterson, an old friend from way back. We'd grown up together along with Lenny, Charlotte, and a few others. Georgie brought along his buddy Bryce to help. When Georgie introduced us, Bryce's eyes widened. Wait, you're that Andy Buckles? My ex-wife would say so, I said. Damn, I know your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. You sleep with her too? Hell no, Bryce said fast. I'm married to Charlotte's cousin. I just heard a lot about you. Bryce wasn't a Charlotte fan, so it didn't take much to get him talking. After the fire, Lenny and Charlotte rented a house together. According to Bryce, Lenny's stories about me depended on her sobriety. Sober, I was the villain. Drunk, she cried about missing me and wondering how to fix things. Charlotte, of course, always told her I wasn't worth it. But the drunker Lenny got, the more she admitted it was all her fault. Bryce also said Lenny and Charlotte blamed me for what happened to Jones. Jones still around? I asked. Nah, I heard he called Lenny a few times before he got his face caved in, but she wasn't interested. Before Bryce left, he mentioned Lenny had gotten another waitressing job and told me where. On my next day off, I stopped by. I sat in the corner, quietly watching her work. With my new beard, I figured she wouldn't recognize me. She was her usual self, fast, friendly, laughing with customers. But when no one was looking, I saw the smile drop. There was a sadness there, just under the surface. I left without saying a word. A few nights later, I was working when Lenny walked into my bar with some guy. She'd lost weight, and I was pretty sure she didn't know I worked there. I scribbled a note. The woman you're with cheated on her husband and gave him an STD. Proceed with caution. When she went to the restroom, I handed it to her date. Someone asked me to give you this. By the time she got back, he was gone. I watched from a distance as she found the crumpled note, read it, and paled. She left, tears in her eyes, without ever realizing I was there. Part of me felt like a petty a-hole. The other part didn't care. Once was enough, I told myself. 2 days later, Lenny called. I know it was you, she said, her voice already shaking. Know what was me? I asked. The note, and all the other ones. What other ones? Every time I get a job, someone calls my boss and says I have an STD, she said. They fire me. Every time I start dating someone, they get warned. It's you, isn't it? Why would I bother? I said. I don't even know where you work. Maybe it's Tyler Jones getting even. I'm not seeing him, she snapped. He said you were the best he'd ever had. I said coldly. Though if that's true, his standards must be garbage. Screw you, she screamed and hung up. I laughed. I'd only sent the one note. The rest, not me. Maybe Jones was screwing with her, but honestly, I figured he had bigger problems, like the guy who punches face in. 3 days later, a well-dressed couple came into the restaurant where I worked. After dinner, they moved to the bar for drinks and music. When the woman stepped away to the restroom, I saw the man slip something into her drink. I walked over, keeping my tone casual. Sorry, sir. I think I mixed up your drinks. Let me replace them. I took both glasses behind the bar, set them aside for evidence, and made fresh ones. When the woman returned, I served them together so she'd be safe. I told the manager what I saw, and she called the police. 2 officers came in quietly and watched from the office, where the manager angled a security camera at the couple. The man did it again the moment the woman walked off to request a song from the pianist. As soon as the pill hit the glass, the cops moved in, taking him to the office along with the tainted drink. They spoke with the woman briefly before escorting both of them out through the back. 2 days later, just before my shift, the manager stopped me in the break room. There's someone at the bar asking for you, she said. Been here since 5, drinking iced tea. I braced for the worst. Lenny. But it wasn't her. When I stepped out, the day bartender gave me a nudge and pointed to the end of the bar. Sitting there was a woman I didn't recognize. I grabbed a towel, dried my hands, and walked over. Hi, I'm Andy, I said. I hear you've been looking for me. She smiled. Dana Alexander. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? I asked. For saving me from that creep who tried to sedate me. Twice. Recognition clicked. Oh, I didn't realize that was you. Are you okay? Thanks to you, yes, she said. If you hadn't stepped in, who knows what could have happened? It wasn't a big deal, I said. It was to me, she said firmly. People like that belong in jail. Well, he's there now, or at least he was before he made bail. I noticed her bare left hand. So, not your husband? Was he your boyfriend? She shuddered. God, no, he was just a coworker. Did he get fired? I asked. Immediately. Was it serious between you two? No, she said. First date. He seemed so nice at work. I usually have a rule about not dating coworkers, but I made an exception. No warning signs? None, she said. Dinner was perfect. Funny, charming, cute. Total bait and switch. At least it's over now, I said. Not quite. She smiled. We still have to testify. We? You'll be called too, she said. That hadn't crossed my mind, but I nodded. I'm happy to help put him away. Dana hung around for a while, and between customers we chatted. She was an architect, which got me thinking how I might have liked that if I'd gone to college. Before leaving, she thanked me again and promised we'd see each other soon. A few days later, someone from the DA's office came by to prep me. Over the next few weeks, I had several meetings, but I never saw Dana again. In the meantime, I'd started sleeping with 2 women, Judy and Anna. No commitments, just fun. They both knew about each other and didn't care. If I spent one night with Judy, the next was Anna's. It worked for all of us. One night, both were at the bar when a trio came in, a woman and 2 guys. They drank, danced, and the woman openly kissed both men. Judy and Anna kept watching, exchanging glances. At one point, Judy joked about paint your wagon, saying the woman was living the dream. Anna leaned in and whispered, Ever think about 2 guys at once? Judy grinned at me. What about you, Andy? Would you be up for a ménage à trois? I shrugged. Depends. I walked off to serve someone, leaving them whispering. When I came back, they were still giggling. Depends how? Anna asked, eyes sparkling. Let's just say boy-boy-girl isn't really my thing. Before they could respond, I stepped away again to help a customer. A moment later, Judy playfully slammed her glass on the bar. Some service over here? I strolled back, towel over my shoulder. They both leaned forward, making sure I noticed their cleavage. When I got close, Judy leaned in and whispered, However. However what? I asked. I don't know any straight man who'd say no to 2 women. I grinned. Fair point. They leaned back, watching me expectantly. Another round? I offered. They shook their heads, laughing. We should probably call it a night. The rest of my shift flew by in a blur, and by the time I finally made it home, it was close to 3 a.m. After a quick rinse in the shower, I was still toweling off on my way to bed when an unexpected knock echoed at the door. I grabbed the towel, wrapped it loosely around my waist, and went to see who it was. "We brought snacks," Anna announced cheerfully as she strolled right past me, Judy following close behind. They knew their way around my place. They'd both stayed over before, though never at the same time. "Yeah," Judy added with a playful giggle. "We figured you could use a little something." I glanced back and forth between the two of them. Both were dressed to impress, clingy tops barely their skirts, and both looked stunning. "All right," I said, playing along. "Where's the food?" "Who said anything about actual food?" Anna teased, her smile turning mischievous. "But you said, 'We brought something to nibble on,'" Judy interrupted, slowly unfastening her blouse. She wasn't wearing a bra, and even though I'd seen her without top before, there's something about seeing a bare chest that never fails to capture a man's attention. She slipped off her blouse entirely, then leaned in to kiss me, soft, slow, and full of promise. "Well," I said with a grin, "this is a nice surprise." Anna glanced down at my towel and laughed. "Looks like he was hoping for company," Judy quipped. Anna stepped closer, her lips almost brushing mine, her breath warm against my skin. Instead of speaking, she exhaled softly. "So, Andy," she murmured, "were you expecting us?" Without waiting for an answer, she kissed me, her hands sliding down to undo the towel, letting it fall to the floor. My knees felt ready to give out right there. With Judy on one side and Anna on the other, they each took one of my hands and guided me back toward the bed. My legs bumped the edge of the mattress, and they gently pushed me down until I was sitting. Judy let her blouse fall to the floor, while Anna, wearing a loose top, tugged it off over her head. She was braless, too. It was the kind of fantasy men only dream about. And I was living it. That night was pure bliss. The queen-size bed I once thought was too big turned out to be just the right size. Our little arrangement carried on for about 3 months. Then Judy left for a sorority cruise and came back head over heels for some junior officer. Anna got a promotion and moved out to Phoenix. I missed them both, but if I'm being honest, I was also a little relieved. It was time for a breather. Not long after, the trial for the guy I stopped from attacking that girl finally took place. I testified for the prosecution, and the creep got 5 years. The whole trial wrapped up in a single day. While I was there, I ran into Dana Alexander. We exchanged a few words, but there wasn't much time for a real conversation. A few nights later, Bryce stopped by the bar. The moment he saw me, he burst out laughing. "You're gonna love this. Lenny and Charlotte are officially done." "What happened now?" I asked. "Apparently, they got hammered one night and went at each other," Bryce said. "Lenny accused Charlotte of dragging her into all kinds of trouble and ruining her marriage. Charlotte fired back, called Lenny a homewrecker, which honestly is hilarious coming from her." He shook his head, still grinning. Anyway, Charlotte stormed out, jumped in her car, and didn't even make it a block before slamming into a parked car, wiping out someone's fence, and crashing straight into their house. "Is she okay?" I asked. "Physically, yeah," Bryce said. "But the car was uninsured, and now she's doing 6 months for DUI, driving uninsured, and leaving the scene. Lost her license for a year, too." I shook my head. "Thanks for the update, but I really don't need to hear about either of them anymore. That chapter's done." That same day, I got promoted. Manager. No more regular night shifts, unless I was covering for the night manager when she needed a break. We traded off shifts occasionally, and it worked out fine. One Wednesday, I was filling in for her. The bar was packed, and I was running around like crazy, but I loved it. The busier the place got, the more I thrived. Once things settled down, I sat at the far end of the bar with a glass of ice water. That's when I felt a light tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Dana Alexander standing there. I stood and offered a smile. "Good evening." "Hi," she said. "How have you been?" "Doing well, thanks. You?" "Pretty good." "What can I do for you tonight?" I asked. "Oh, nothing," she said. "My friends and I are just here for dinner, and I figured I'd say hi." "Hope you enjoy," I said, watching as she rejoined a couple at one of the tables and disappeared into the dining area. Later that night, I helped a woman half carry her intoxicated husband outside and into a cab. Mental note, remind the servers to pay closer attention to how much our guests are drinking. As the taxi drove off, I turned back toward the entrance and nearly bumped into Dana. "I was looking for you," she said. "Well, you found me," I said. "I see that," she replied with a soft smile. Still keeping an eye on everyone, I see. Part of the job, I said, exaggerating a corny Texas drawl. She hesitated for a moment. Okay, so I hope this doesn't come off too weird. I've never done this before, but would you maybe want to grab a drink with me sometime? Just as a thank you. I blinked, completely caught off guard. Out of everything I expected to happen, Dana Alexander asking me out wasn't even on the list. Oh, God, she said, already backing away. Forget it. I'm sorry. That was stupid. You're probably married or seeing someone. Wait, hold on. I gently caught her hand to stop her retreat. She turned back, her eyes wide. For the record, I said, I'm not married and I'm not seeing anyone. I'm just a little surprised. Gorgeous women don't usually ask me out, but yes, I'd love to have a drink with you. Her smile lit up her whole face, a mix of excitement and relief. How about Friday, or are you working? Friday works great, I said. What time and where should I pick you up? Nope, she said with a playful grin. I asked, so I'm picking you up. 7, okay? Perfect, I said. I gave her my address and she saved it in her phone. When Friday rolled around, I was ready right at 7 o'clock. I had no clue what to wear, and for the first time ever, I truly understood why women stress about first dates. After agonizing over my options, I finally settled on slacks, a blazer, and a tie. As soon as I got in the car, Dana glanced over. Would you mind if we upgraded from drinks to dinner? I ended up skipping lunch. Dinner sounds perfect, I said with a smile. She took me to this incredible upscale restaurant. The kind of place I'd never pick for myself. We enjoyed a fantastic meal, shared a dance or two, and then she drove me home. When we pulled up outside my building, she stepped out like she was planning to walk me to my door. I shook my head, smiling. You don't need to walk me up. How else am I supposed to give you a goodnight kiss? She teased. Grinning, I circled around to her side of the car and wrapped my arms around her. Thanks for a wonderful evening. Then I leaned in and kissed her. A soft, intentional kiss, right on the lips, not some polite peck on the cheek. She smiled, slid back into her car, and drove off into the night. I practically floated up the stairs to my apartment, riding the high of what felt like the perfect date. At least until I realized I'd made a rookie mistake. I hadn't asked for her phone number. As I changed out of my clothes, I went through my usual routine of emptying my pockets. When I reached into my jacket's inner pocket, my fingers brushed against a small card. I pulled it out. Dana's business card. On the back, in neat handwriting, was her personal cell number. She must have slipped it into my pocket at some point while we were dancing. Her company name and office address were printed on the front, so I tucked that information away for future reference. I held off on calling her over the weekend. Instead, on Monday morning, I ordered 24 roses and had them delivered straight to her office. Around lunchtime, the phone rang at the bar. Orascani Bar and Grill. This is Andy, I answered. Hey, Andy, it's Dana, she said. I just got the most gorgeous roses. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, my lady, I said, grinning so wide it felt like my face might split. There was a brief pause before I added, I was actually planning to call you later to see if you'd like to have dinner again. I'd love to, Dana said. When were you thinking? Well, today's Monday and everyone saves Friday for date night, I said. So how about Tuesday? She laughed. I'm not sure I follow your logic, but Tuesday sounds great. She gave me her address, and I suggested 7 o'clock. When I pulled up to her place, I was impressed. A beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood. We ended up having another amazing evening together. Over the following weeks, we started seeing each other regularly, usually at least 3 times a week. At some point, she opened up about her past. She'd been married for 5 years, but it just fizzled out. No big fights, no affairs. They simply drifted apart. We actually get along better now than we ever did as a married couple, she told me once, almost offhandedly. He's living out on the West Coast these days. The house she lived in had belonged to both of them, and she got it in the divorce. I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for the guy, still on the hook for the mortgage on a house he no longer lived in. That pang of sympathy hit even harder the first time Dana and I slept together in that same house, in the very bed they used to share. We even ended up showering together, in the same bathroom they once used. For about 6 months, we were solid. We laughed, we teased each other, and we spent as much time together as our schedules allowed. I was grateful that my shifts were flexible, except for the occasional nights I covered for our night manager. As usual, I called her to figure out when we could meet up again. Sorry, Andy, she said. My ex is in town and we're having dinner to catch up. Oh, all right. Have a good time. I tried not to let it bother me. She'd always said they were just friends now, that the romance was ancient history. I gave her some space and didn't call again for a couple of days. When I finally did, she sounded a little distracted. Cliff's still here, she said. We've just been catching up and work's been crazy too. I'm working on some major project with a tight deadline. That's when the thought hit me. The old ex with benefits scenario. I didn't have any proof, no reason to assume anything had happened between them, but I'd also never had any reason to suspect Lenny was cheating either. And look how that turned out. The difference was, Lenny was my wife. Dana and I weren't in any kind of official relationship. She had every right to see or sleep with whoever she wanted. Still, the thought gnawed at me. Should I ask her? Did I even want to hear the answer? I tried calling her that evening, but my call went straight to voicemail. I gave her office a shot instead. Miss Alexander's unavailable at the moment, her receptionist said. Would you like to leave a message? No thanks, I said, hanging up. A week drifted by. Finally, while sitting in my office, I decided to try her number again. This time she answered. Hey, I said. How's it going? Good, she said. Sorry I haven't called. Things have been nonstop over here. Mind if I ask you something? I asked. Sure, go ahead. Is Cliff still around? There was a brief silence. Why do you want to know? Just curious, I said. Why does it matter? She asked. And before I could stop myself, the words were already out. Are you sleeping with him? The silence that followed was answer enough. I hung up and dragged myself back into the kitchen to check on the night's orders. I powered through the rest of my shift, stuck somewhere between angry and numb. Back at home, I slipped into my usual evening routine, emptied my pockets, got undressed, and took a long, hot shower. Afterward, I threw on my robe, poured myself a stiff gin and tonic, and sank into my armchair to watch the evening news. I had barely leaned back in my chair and taken my first sip when someone started banging on my door so hard I thought the whole frame might come loose. I put down my drink and went to open it. Dana burst through like a storm on legs. You're unbelievable, she shouted, her eyes blazing. Do you even hear yourself sometimes? You are the most insecure idiot I've ever met. I stood there with the door still open, caught completely off guard. I'm a grown woman, Andy, she went on, voice sharp and rising. I'm single. I'm well past 21. And I'm free to live my life however I see fit. No insecure, jealous man gets to tell me otherwise. Her chest heaved as she glared at me. If I wanted to sleep with my ex or a dozen other men, that's my business. Just like you have the same freedom to do whatever you want with whoever you want. I started to say something, but she cut me off. That's the whole point, Andy. You don't get to decide who I sleep with. Just like I don't get to control who you sleep with. I wasn't interested in anyone else, I muttered. I only wanted you. Her brow furrowed. What does that mean, wanted? She asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Are you saying you're done with me now? Not if you've been with your ex, or anyone else for that matter. She let out a frustrated groan, running a hand through her hair. For God's sake, Andy, I haven't slept with anyone but you. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Then why have you been ghosting me all week? I demanded. Because I've been at work, she shot back. Our project's behind schedule, and if we don't hit our deadline, the company gets slapped with massive penalties. I shook my head. You didn't have time to call me, but you had time to hang out with Cliff? Her expression hardened. We were negotiating what to do about the house, she said sharply. He's getting remarried, and keeping up the payments on this place isn't an option for him anymore. He asked if I could take over the mortgage entirely. You already own the house, I said. You got it in the divorce. I could have told him to deal with it on his own, but I'm not heartless, Andy, she said. We worked out a deal. I'll take over the loan, and he'll send me a small payment every month until his share is covered. She gave me a pointed look. It's all above board. Nothing sneaky. We're friends. That's it. The romance ended a long time ago. Where was he staying while he was here? I asked. Dana threw her head back, groaning in exasperation. Are you seriously going to be this jealous forever? Probably, I admitted. So? Where did he stay? At my sister's place, she said. It's a few miles from my house. You sure you didn't sleep with him? I asked. She threw her arms in the air. Of course I slept with him. He was my husband for 5 years. I flinched. She rolled her eyes. Not this time, genius. Were you even listening? No, I didn't sleep with him. What about the other 20 guys? I asked, unable to resist a smirk. You're impossible, she muttered. Pour me a drink. I gave her a questioning look. And then, she said, her smile slow and sultry, you can lose the clothes. I'll be happy to remind you exactly who's in my bed.